All right. Chapter 3 Prophecies by the Figure of a Serpent. The seed of the woman bruising the serpent's head. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. Genesis, I'm not sure what that is, something in there. This text is often cited by Christian writers and controversialists as prefiguring the mission of the Christian Savior. Example, the destruction of the serpent, alias the devil. St. John calls the grand adversary of souls which deceiveth the whole world. The dragon, the serpent, the devil, and Satan. Revelations, looks like 11. Serpent, then, is the devil, that is, the dragon, the serpent, the devil, and Satan are all one. The object of this chapter is to show the origin of the singular figure set forth in the first text quoted, and to prove that those Christian writers who assume it to be a revelation from heaven were profoundly ignorant of Oriental history, as the same figure is found in several heathen systems of older date, as we will now cite the facts to prove. Some of the saviors or demigods of Egypt, India, Greece, Persia, Mexico, and Etruria are represented by performing the same drama with the serpent or devil. Osiris of Egypt, says Mr. Bryant, bruised the head of the serpent after it had bitten his heel. Descending to Greece, Mr. Faber relates that on the spheres Hercules is represented in the act of contending with the serpent, the head of which is placed under his foot, and this serpent guarded the tree with golden fruit in the midst of the garden Hesperides, Eden. Origin of Idolatry, Volume 1, page 443. And we may observe, says this author, the same tradition in the Phoenician fable of Ophion or Ophineus, Ibid. In Genesis, the serpent is the subject of two legends, but here it will be observed that they are both couched in one. Again, it is related by more than one Oriental writer that Krishna of India is represented on some very ancient sculptures and stone monuments with his heel on the head of a serpent. Mr. Maurice, in his Indian Antiquities, Volume 2, speaks of Krishna crushing the head of a serpent with his foot, and pronounces the striking similarity of this story with that found in the Christian Bible as very mysterious. Another author tells us the image of Krishna is sculptured in the ancient temples of India, sometimes wreathed in the folds of a serpent, which it is biting his foot, and sometimes treading victoriously on the head of the serpent. Progressive Prague Rel Ideas, Volume 1. In the Mexican Antiquities, Volume 6, we are told, a messenger from heaven announced to the first woman created, Suchuqual, Suchuquel, Suchiquuecul, that she should never bear a son who should bruise the serpent's head, and then presented her with a rose. Here is the origin of the Genesis legend, the rose being the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The ancient Persians, says Volney in his Ruin of Empires, page 169, had the tradition of a virgin from whom they predicted would be born or would spring up a shoot, a son, that would crush the serpent's head and thus deliver the world from sin. And both the serpent and the virgin, he tells us, are represented imaginarily in the heavens and pictured on their astronomical globes and spheres as on those of Romish Christian. See Burritt's Geography of the Heavens. In the ancient Etrurian story, instead of the seed of the woman, the virgin, it is the woman herself who is represented as standing with one foot on the head of a serpent, which has the twig of an apple tree in its mouth, to which an apple is suspended, the forbidden fruit, while its tail is twisted around a celestial globe. thus reminding us of St. John's dragon hauling down 1/3 of the stars with his tail. See Revelation, looks like 7:4. In the ancient celestial diagram of the Etrurian, the head of the Virgin is surmounted with a crown of stars, doubtless the same legend from which St. John borrowed his metaphor of a woman with a crown of 12 stars on her head. Revelation 13. The Regina Stellarium, Queen of the Stars, spoken of in some of the ancient systems, appertains to the same fable. Also, the tradition of Achilles of Greece being invulnerable in the heel, as related by Homer. The last clause of the first text quoted reads, "It shall bruise thy head," a very curious prophetic reference to the Savior of the world. If the text refers to him, to represent him as being of the neuter gender, for the neuter pronoun it always refers to a thing without sex. In the further exposition of the serpent tradition, we are now brought to notice and will trace to its origin the story of the original transgression of the fall of man, two cardinal doctrines of the Christian religion. Like every other tenet of the Christian faith, we find these doctrines taught in heathen systems much older than Christianity, and whose antiquity antedates even the birth of Moses. We will first notice the Persian tradition. According to the doctrines of the Persians, says the Reverend J.C. Pitrat, Misha and Mishain, the first man and first woman, were pure and submitted to Ormuzd, their maker. But Ahriman, the evil one, saw them and envied them their happiness. He approached them under the form of a serpent, presented fruits to them, and persuaded them that he was the maker of man, of animals, plants, and of the beautiful universe in which they dwelt. They believed it. Since that time, Ahriman was their master. Their natures became corrupt, and this corruption infested their whole posterity. The story is taken from the Vendetta of the Persians, 305 and 428. The Indian or Hindu story is furnished us by the Reverend Father Bakat in a letter to the bishops of Avranches, and runs thus: Our Hindus say the gods tried by all means to obtain immortality. After many inquiries and trials, they conceived the idea that they would find it in the tree of life, which is the Korkan, paradise. If in fact they succeeded, and by eating once in a while of the fruits of that tree, they kept the precious treasure they so much valued. A famous snake named Caden saw that the tree of life had been found by the gods of the second order. As probably he had been entrusted with guarding that tree, he became so angry because his vigilance had been deceived that he immediately poured out an enormous quantity of poison which spread over the whole earth. How much like this story is the story of St. John. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. The idea of a snake or serpent inundating the earth from its mouth, as taught in both stories, is so novel and so far removed from the sphere of natural causes and possible events that we are compelled to the conclusion that one is borrowed from the other, or both from a common original. And, as facts cited in other chapters prove beyond dispute, that the Hindu system containing this story extends in antiquity far beyond the time of Moses. The question is thus settled as to which system borrowed the story from the other. Before closing the chapter, we wish to call the attention of the reader to the important fact that 3 out of 4 are the cardinal doctrines of the Christian faith are taught in the 2 heathen mythological stories of creation just presented. 1. Original sin. 2. The fall of man caused by a serpent. 3. the consequent corruption of depravity of the human race. It says 4, but it's only 3. These doctrines, then, it must be admitted, are of heathen origin, and not, as Christians claim, important truths revealed from heaven. For a historical exposition of the other cardinal doctrine of the Christian faith, example, or viz., man's restoration by the atonement achieved through the crucifixion of a God, see chapters 16 and 21.